understanding the technology that powers the money is essential. Knowing the business drivers that inspire how the money is made is crucial. Bridging the gap between the mind of the technologist and the mind of the business is monumental. That is what TBF is all about. Let's start this never-ending conversation. It's time. We are back with another episode of the Tech Behind FinTech. Today, I'm really excited. I have a returning guest, Medina Williams, on the show, and we are going to talk about the AI Explainability Challenge in FinTech. Medina, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's exciting to be here again and talk about this topic.
See, like this is your third time. I'm thinking.
Yes, I believe so. It is. Third time's the charm, right?
I love friends of the show because it's like a reunion almost, and we get a chance to like talk about like cool topics and really dive in. So it's always a pleasure when you're on the show. Let me do some housekeeping things, and I'm going to introduce you. So we are streaming live from Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, and we also have a stream going from Instagram. Those on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitch, feel free to drop in a comment, share your thoughts, and I'll make it part of the show. Those on Instagram, you can go to the techbehindfintech.com. That's where we're live. Actually, let me include that and pin it so you guys have it on Instagram. And then you also could be part of the show. If not, you'll just be seeing my face and you will not be seeing Medina, which will be a shame because she's the guest. And trust me, you want to see Medina talk. So those on Instagram, now you have that information where you can find it. It's pinned. And I have to do my guest justice. So let me read her bio. So even though she's a returning guest, some of you may not know her. So I'll read the bio. We'll get into it. Medina Williams, CFE, CSM, LSSGB, and a PMP Plus Security Plus is a current Purdue doctoral student with degrees in mathematics and a master's in economics. Ms. Williams has years of public and private sector experience and is currently working as a product manager, helping a complex agency with its fraud and data management portfolios. And once again, we are here to talk about the AI Explainability Challenge in FinTech. Got a lot of acronyms there, man. It's a lot of 3 words behind your name. I love it. So that shows
Thanks.
a lot of work and a lot of dedication to your craft and your field. So that is awesome. Okay. So I don't think so. For those that don't know, right, I think it's a good idea that we start with what exactly is the AI explainability problem. Let's get into that. And then let's get into the challenge in FinTech.
Okay, sounds great. So I think the AI explainability problem is kind of twofold, and I think we'll probably talk about that here a bit today. I'll start kind of with that technical definition because I know in a fairly recent episode, he kind of talked about some AI aspects, and I wanted to kind of bring that forward here and kind of talk about some use cases, and one particular one that's personal to me. From a technical perspective, we know when we're constructing AI models, the challenge is kind of a trade-off between, accuracy, fairness, and then kind of explainability. That's kind of something that I think in the literature, they're kind of exploring right now and doing some tests around. But when we define explainability in from a technical aspect, it's not just the causal knowledge, but also like transparency of the internal AI processes and the underlying assumptions. So this is where a lot of the bias and fairness aspects come in. But that's the kind of the technical definition between explainability. Another dynamic, and I think we'll talk about this a little bit later today, from explainability is thinking about your fintech customers, right? And you're going to have their data, and they're going to be the ones subjected to being in this AI model that you may create. Let's think about how we could explain, a result that a financial institution might give a applicant of that's trying to achieve some type of a credit line or try to apply for something. That's another aspect of explainability from the customer or member or whatever client aspect. that I think needs to be brought forth here into the discussion.
No, that's good. I mean, and I like it, because what's happening in this shift across different verticals. Obviously, we're a big thing right now is fintech because that's what our show is based on. But AI is propagating across multiple verticals, right? And soon it's just gonna well, soon I don't even know if soon or if we're here yet, where every emerging startup has some sort of AI capability. Incumbents are building AI capabilities. So right now we're moving towards a world where we're going to have this functionality all over the place being used in all walks of life. And from what you're saying with the explainability problem is, most don't really understand how the models work. But the problem also happens when those that are building the models don't fully understand how the models work, right? So then
Yeah.
we this challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the beauty and kind of the challenge, like you said, with AI, is it's just a new dynamic of doing things. You have a lot of data and utilizing that data to the best of your knowledge, but when it comes down to it, there's got to be there's some explaining to do behind it, right? So again, I think from the technical aspect, but again, from a client. And I think we're going to talk about even, one of the things I think about having been in this sector is a legal aspect, right? When you get down to it, there are going to be some legal aspects that you have to think about. I think just the bias and fairness that's come to the surface. But then when it comes down to individual cases, you could be looking at a situation where you want to protect, your company from legal challenges. How are you going to be able to do that with using these really state of the art tools and methods?
No, it's good. And I know that, we were talking for a while about like what show topic to address and things, and this came up based on a personal experience that you had. And then then we start to say, what, let's dive into this topic. Do you want to share that personal experience?
Sure. And I know you talked about, I mean, everybody is probably going to be affected if we haven't already been affected by AI. I mean, I know we have chatbots, but when it comes to like from a financial perspective, decisions or data or recommendations of products and services. So what happened to me late last year, towards the end of the last year, is I got an email from a longtime financial institution that I have banked with pretty much since inception, and it was a little surprising to me because it was, hey, we've you recent deposit that was made into your account. We're putting a good portion of it on hold. We received confidential information that states that, hey, there may be some issues with the deposit. So it's going to be on an extended hold. And, at a certain point in time, we're going to go ahead and release it once it's cleared the other financial institution. Now, bear in mind, this amount that was deposited has something I've had deposited for 4 or 5 years plus, in varying amounts, but around the same dollar figure. There were no other, differences that I had found or was able to ascertain about this particular deposit. So I ended up calling the financial institution and speaking with some of the customer service representatives. Just curiosity. I mean, if you're going to hold my money, you can go ahead. You can hold my money. I'll wait. But I just wanted to get some more information, behind that. What was behind it? And speaking with one financial institution customer service representative, that person actually told me, she said, yeah, I received another hold on my check I deposited, which kind of came out from the blue. And I work for this financial institution. So I found that very, very interesting. And, knowing some of these things and being in this industry, your mind kind of starts to go like, okay, what's really kind of going on here? What's the undercurrent of what I'm experiencing or what I'm seeing? So I called this financial institution, a few times, and then let the whole period pass. The money was released, no issues with the deposit. I called them several times thereafter, and I said, "Hey, can you please give me some documentation? Like, can I get a copy of the check? Because mind you, I had already had a copy of the deposit slip, but not a full copy of that check." And I asked, and I didn't get any response. So again, things start, kind of turning in my mind, and that's kind of where it is still today. Like I still don't have any answers of why this particular check was put on hold. several deposits of this nature since then, and there have been no holds. So one of the things I ended up doing is calling this financial institution back, speaking with the supervisor, and basically just told them, "Hey, fix your models. This model was wrong. Kind of it's, hey, it was a false positive. Fix the model and just provide some pushback." So that's kind of where it landed, but it kind of got me thinking about, again, what we're talking about today is this explainability problem. When you have those kind of one off, but on aggregate, they may not necessarily be one off. How do you approach that from a customer, client, member perspective of letting them know, hey, this is how we're doing business now, and just being able to kind of really explain to them, this new dynamic.
It's interesting, right? Just I don't I don't know. This is the part of me that just grew up in New York, and I'm just skeptical of everything. So I think that's what most New Yorkers are. But I I can't see them writing to an end user and explaining to them that the reason this happened is because of a model error. I I can't I can't see that happening. I could see them saying it was a bank error. I can see them saying something else, but I cannot see them talking about this from that deep in the tech stack and error from that perspective. But I do agree with you that I think that these errors are going to become more frequent in the future, right? Definitely agree with that. I just don't see them attributing it to the mom. I can't like, and if it does, that would be a huge surprise.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but it's something to think about, right? Like how, a lot of times, like you said, when there's an error, you were made aware, hey, it was a bank error. Maybe they transcribed a number accidentally. These type of things happen all the time. But I think for, again, from a financial institution perspective, you really need to think about when you get it wrong, when you have your, kind of that confusion matrix that I know that comes up in AI models, you have, true negatives or false positives. When you have those false positives, how are you going to explain those to your clients? And if from a client perspective, like for me, when I called back in and pushed back on, that was my effort to kind of say, hey, you need to retrain your models because it was wrong here. But I think that there's something to be said about when is it going to be taken a step further, and we're starting to see that with some of the litigation that's happening with AI models, of like when some folks realize, when there's that aggregate and that critical mass that realize, hey, there may be something else here. How are you as a financial institution preparing for those type of things and being able to really kind of have the documentation, have those, that information necessary to say, hey, this is the due diligence that we did. Yes, we use this sophisticated technology, but how are you going to be able to explain it and kind of open your books?
Look, I love the fact that from a researcher perspective and a doctoral student, you're like, you know what? This happened. I want to dig into it and figure out more. I absolutely love it. And as you were talking, I'm thinking it's almost like that chef, that Gordon Ramsay guy, right? It's like him going to a restaurant, eating a meal. Wait a minute. You put like he's naming off random ingredients that where people don't want. "Well, I think you put too much of this, too much of that, and that's why this meal is off." But have that level of expertise and being clear, see to know. Okay, I know why this happened. It's definitely a model error. I think that's pretty awesome. Number one, right? And digging deeper because sometimes this is how research papers are made. It's like, okay, I see this happen. Now I want to collect more data on it and then like really go in on it and get more use cases. So I totally respect that aspect. But I do it now, and I know that offline you were talking, you sent article regarding a lawsuit. You want to talk about that? I'm gonna put the I'll put the link in the chat. We could kind of get into it.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
I think we're starting to see, and again, a lot of this has to come out in the court system, right? There has to be a lawsuit filed, and then a litigation kind of begins. Um, but I think we're starting to see this in adjacent fields, like for instance, I mean, easily in the health profession, right? Some of the major insurers are using, AI models, and in one of those articles, I think you're going to drop in the chat, they actually talk about how these models denied care for some elderly patients. And obviously, there was a critical mass that kind of came together and realized this was happening. So some of these big health insurers, as they go through the process, they're probably going to have to provide, information related to discovery that kind of talks about, how they came to the conclusions that they came to. So again, that's one of those things that I would and passionately implore, anyone that constructs AI models. I mean, I think doing that aspects, because a lot of the focus is on the accuracy. How well does it predict, some type of, situation happening, or likelihood of something occurring, or likelihood of default in the case of a financial institution, I would think. But really think about step back and think about it from like the client perspective of, and a customer experience, of course, is a big deal since the pandemic. But really, what kind of path do they have? What kind of friction may they experience with, their information being used in the AI model, and any interactions that could brush up against that. So,
That was very interesting because in the article, and you sent this earlier, I'm just going to read some of it right now, and let me just go to the parts that so basically, the increasing use of AI and advanced technology, and it's healthcare, but it deals with insurance. So it's kind of, we always say insurance is fintech, is setting into motion a wave of lawsuits that attorneys expect to grow in the months ahead. Insurers, Humana, Cigna, and United Healthcare are facing class actions from consumers and their estates for allegedly deploying advanced technology to deny claims. The litigation comes amid increasing efforts from Congress and the Biden administration to develop a legal framework around the quickly expanding role of artificial intelligence. But this is in healthcare. You can see how it could go to other verticals. And I know just from, this is conversations I had with some people in insurance, right, that behind the scenes, initially when you call it, make the claim, in some cases it's denied, right? Just off jump.
yes.
Call again and again and again, and they eventually it'll go through. But I guess it's to stop that one way. It's all mathematics. Like, well, if we could get 20% of people to not follow up, then that's a win. But and then I can see how using automation and AI to just quickly do that. And then from the other side, you can get into large class action suits with these types of actions, as we're seeing with this particular issue in this particular vertical. So, you know, just so people can get, I did gather some use cases that we could kind of go through it regarding the AI explainability problem in fintech. So one, from a loan denial perspective, right? These are just use cases, like just in general. We're just going to go through and talk about. So a young entrepreneur applies for a small business loan through a fintech platform. The AI system denies the loan, citing a low credit score as the primary reason. However, the entrepreneur has a limited credit history due to being a recent college graduate. Without a clear explanation of the other factors considered by the AI, the entrepreneur is left frustrated and unsure how to improve their chances for future approval. So let's talk about that scenario, right?
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, again, that's a really great aspect of like that friction that exists, right? And again, AI, I think it explains, its reasoning and how it goes about, the modeling of it. Looks at different dimensions that I think, as a human, we don't necessarily consider as plausible. So, I think that's another one where, again, on aggregate, you don't want to see those type of things happening. And I mean, I know a lot of folks have seen in the news, like, like a denial just like that from a major financial institution. Now they're being subjected to litigation because they realize, collectively that there was some bias in that. And it's been well discussed talked about, even researched about, the bias that's inherent in a lot of AI models that unfortunately built in is hard to tease out. So you could kind of see how um, the human side of that, right? There's certainly a qualitative reasoning why, that entrepreneur does not have a long history, but from the way the AI is trained and some of the dimensions that are modeled, that makes sense for them to be a flat out denial. I think the financial institution, again, this is where they need to do their due diligence, really. And maybe I would say maybe you need to not necessarily send it to prod right away. You need to like do a really robust review of that model. Maybe keep your human certainly in the loop earlier, and then kind of understand like the differences between that human in the loop model and then the AI model, and then work to improve the modeling and the outcome.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if you take this scenario, and mind you, this is not necessarily, these are just, and just so the audience understands, right? We're not, these scenarios are not from a particular news article, anything like that, besides the one I posted. We're just going over high level scenarios that can give examples of the AI explainability problem. But if you take that scenario now, you know, I don't know, like let's just go back to the 20 years ago, right? The same concept, right? But I'm dealing with a banker now. And I'm explaining this. I'm that young college graduate. I'm explaining the situation, and this decision can now be different based on a myriad of factors. Just besides, okay, this is what the model is trained with. This is the data that it received, and based on this data, this particular applicant has a low credit history, denying all other factors, right? And this is why we are coming towards this result. But it's hard to make it, it's no other correlations and relationships besides, okay, these are just what we see, but it's not taking into account other factors. um
Well, and
let's
Mindy, I'll add too for that applicant, right? They have a denial on their history now, which is somewhat based on a, arbitrary method. I mean, that's going to impact them later because chances are they'll probably go shop around to another financial institution, right? And then the way that they go about doing that application process and underwriting is probably going to be a little different. But now they kind of have that factor of having been denied potentially by an AI model, whereas they, normally would have stood a good chance of receiving that, or could have been denied for another reason. So it's again, that explainability that has those downstream effects. I will say too. I think something to be considered.
that's interesting. That part, that is interesting. I don't, huh. Okay, yeah, that I could see that being interesting in terms of that denial, or and based on my experience, is where you just start having now multiple credit inquiries, because as you shop
Exactly.
around, it could definitely further negatively impact the credit score. Let me see here. I thought I had a comment there. That was my stuff. Next one, right? Um, Robo investing, right? So, a robo advisor platform recommends a conservative investment strategy for a young professional with a high risk tolerance. The explanation provided mentions the client's age as a significant factor. However, upon investigation, it's discovered that the AI model was trained on historical data skewed towards older investors with a more risk adverse profile. The bias in the training data led to an unsuitability cautious recommendation for the younger client. So we have someone who extremely aggressive, high risk profile in terms of saying, you know what, I'm younger. I don't mind taking the risk and investing in certain things. So I have a lot more time versus someone who's, closer to retirement, maybe a little bit more conservative, but not a model is basically giving them a more conservative approach. It's not, it wouldn't lose their money, but they're not really maximizing the greatest resource they have, which is time. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think here again, it's so important to have that human in the loop because that human provides that basis for potentially being able to really understand the intuition of why things are coming out or why the recommendations are there. I think when it comes to investing, again, it's really important to set your baseline. And there's so many other factors, economic factors and things. And like you said, the training data based on the prior economic factors and how they're predicting, that may not be the best call for them, when they look back on it. But I think particularly for young investors, right, they're just setting their baselines. So it's really important to understand the different perspectives, understand the different risk profiles when it comes to investing, and relying, solely on an AI model that data may be from, a different era, different era of doing financial institutions, economics, different type of financial climate. It's really challenging, I think, for them to make informed decisions. But
Another
I think
one.
they also have to know where those decisions are coming from and what they're based on.
And I think that's like the challenging aspect. And in this scenario coming up, this one that is more similar to your story, right? A fintech payment app flags a customer's legitimate transaction is fraudulent due to an unusual location. The explanation mentions generic factors, but doesn't detail specific patterns identified. The lack of transparency can lead to customer inconvenience and frustration, especially if they are denied access to their funds. That's your story in a nutshell.
Yes, exactly. And I'm pretty sure from my financial institution days, there are certain regulatory requirements that have to be stated whenever there's a denial of certain aspects or a decision made on a financial institution. So, can you imagine like something happening, and how would that financial institution really kind of attach itself to those, regulatory provisions of like how to explain why there was a denial? Like, where's the AI model going to come in with that? That's kind of the thing there. And I think, the message, hopefully it's fairly clear now, is, that AI, this aspect is really powerful. But again, it's still, in my opinion, being proven. So it's really important to understand you know, the full life cycle of it, not only just from developing it from a fintech perspective, but really using user experience to really test what that's like, and really, just do your due diligence, understanding what you're kind of putting out there in prod or, for production.
And it's interesting what you said because, like I said, these are more high level scenarios to explain the problem. But in your real case, right, you didn't receive a letter or some sort of a full valid explanation. And to your point, right, and I don't have the regulatory standard for that, but it does seem that it is something that I know for like denials for sure. You have to get a letter of why you was denied and access to your credit report. But in terms of holds like that, I wonder if there's a regulatory standard that was missed in your scenario that you did not get a letter. Okay, this is why it was held. I don't want to. This is the problem sometimes of a live show. Like you have to kind of go off the dome. Like, and I'm like, what? I'm so curious now if there is something there because if that's the case, right, then they violated a regulatory standard. I'm really interested to know that. Um, I know the basic ones. I know definitely if you're applying for credit and you're denied, then you have to get a letter. And if your credit was accessed, you could then request access to that your credit report from one of the agencies for sure. And I think that's what the Fair Credit Reporting Act or something like that. I wonder in that other scenario because that would be interesting now. Now, because that would definitely be interesting if if it was some sort of hole and there's a regulatory standard that they have to send you a letter based on that. And I don't have that information top of my fingertips, but I would be interested on a follow up for that. And a last scenario, regulatory challenges. A fintech company utilizes AI to automate anti money laundering and AML compliance checks. However, regulators struggle to understand the inner workings of the AI model, hindering their ability to assess its effectiveness and ensure compliance with evolving regulations. These case studies highlight the real world of the AI explainability problem.
Yeah, I mean, totally. You certainly, as a financial institution, want to do your due diligence against losses, right? And detection, because there's plenty of aspects, from a regulatory perspective where you have to, try to prevent, detect, prevent. money laundering. Um, but they're going to be again, it's hard to know some of when you have those, I'd say true positives, and again, continuously updating your model, and then the vectors of which people perform, money laundering change fairly frequently. Fraudsters are some of the most intelligent people out there, in my opinion. So they will adapt to those things and try different approaches. So I think, again, having that feedback, and that's kind of why I decided to call my financial institution. And like I said, once I kind of read through the lines, didn't receive any documentation per se yet from them about why the hole was placed. The conclusion that I was left with was like, hey, this is probably some type of new cutting edge model that they're using, and let me give them a free feedback loop of telling them, hey, let's make sure you denote that this one wasn't it. Like my deposit wasn't, a bad check. And like I said, I haven't had the issue since. But I found it very telling that somebody else that worked there, who had a very somewhat similar circumstance with me, had the same thing happen to them without any explanation why. So I don't know. With the AML one, I think that's very challenging. I mean, it's very dynamic too. Um, and there's a lot of other paperwork, right? You have your currency transaction reports for transactions over $10,000, or your suspicious activity reports that you have to file if you feel like there's, um, you know, transactions with money that meet a certain threshold. So I think that's also very challenging. But certainly for that one, you have to have, as a financial institution, your ducks in a row, especially if you're, you know, sourcing this information, and so that the federal government can possibly take some type of action, sanctioning action, or some type of action on the potential, members or clients or customers that are performing these transactions.
I mean, from everything we're talking about is really like having that understanding of the reasoning behind these models. And because like any type of technology, you're going to have subsequent versions, right? Like nothing going like I've been in this game for like a while, right? So funny because as soon as I said I've been in this game, I thought about like a Biggie line. I always,
From New
I
York,
always,
definitely.
yeah, I definitely like relate rap lines to like real life situations. So, but as I was saying, I've never seen anything go to production without subsequent versions after it. Like nothing. I've never seen something go to production perfect off the rip. Never, ever. Matter of fact,
Mhm.
if you even like from a business perspective, you wait till it's perfect, you're gonna be waiting for like years because who's
Sure.
actually you have to stick with real users. So with that said, right, and this is just technology in general, right? But now with that said, with the model, it's not going to be perfect. But the differences with just basic, software being released in pre AI was like we understood exactly what we were building. So we understand, okay, well, these are some issues we're going to face. Let's get some users in and test it. Let's make some subsequent versions and so forth for the lifespan of the application. Now, with the model is a problem, especially as it relates to now your this explainability challenge, is a lack of understanding of the reasoning on why certain results are happening. So, it's really takes that like deeper understanding and oversight because to add in, okay, well, these are the results. We have to now fix this moving forward to retrain the model and also maybe even add more data sets to it, right? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think here, I mean, this kind of relates back to, some of the work I know that, you do in strategic generation is, you set your level of tolerance at your risk that you have, for these type of models. I think it's just very important to do the due diligence. I mean, I think about how my particular scenario would have gone without this model being present, and how it's kind of gone since, and making sure that human is in that loop, I think it's very important to really put some really strong guardrails around these capabilities, especially in highly regulated fields, as we talked about the health insurance industry and the financial services industry, to really be very cautious and in their deployment and their use. And then also, again, on the other side, to provide that documentation and then to have those details ready to essentially explain why you made the decision that you did. And you can't I don't think it's a good approach to kind of say that the AI model told me so, right? You never want to do that, but when you kind of if you don't think about these problems in advance, that's essentially kind of maybe what you're gearing yourself up for a situation potentially.
And I want to get your thoughts on like, okay, let's talk about the approach. We're gonna take a quick moment to just for a sponsor break, and then I wanna like talk about what are the next steps? Like what are some thoughts around that? When we get back, we'll get further into that conversation and take a brief um, sponsor break. Give me a second, and we'll come back.
Are you an emerging fintech with a limited budget seeking more sales and partners? Introducing Strategic Generation, your partner in leveraging cybersecurity for sales and partner enablement. Fintechs often lose opportunities due to unsophisticated cybersecurity programs. That's where we come in. Strategic Generation assists with due diligence, security posture visibility, penetration testing, and on-demand virtual CISO services. We connect your systems to our partnered platform, and voila! Instant access to real-time diagnostics and compliance frameworks such as SOC 2 and PCI DSS. Gain the confidence of prospects and partners. Strengthen your cybersecurity program and drive success. Stop losing deals due to cybersecurity. Visit strategicgeneration.com and click on Demand CISO to connect with an expert.
Just like that, we are back. So and it's interesting because I know we're both in PhD programs. I need to really start diving in terms of my specialty. That's one of the things on my list in the next few months. But one of the things that has been really fascinating me, and it kind of relates to this topic, is more about like machine learning operations and securing that pipeline. Because like for a while, I've been really throughout my career, release management, and then it turned into like application security and DevSecOps. And I'm looking at that, and as we're talking right now, for me, it's more so the security of that,
Mhm.
right? And it boils down to the same security issues that we're facing now with software, with some added complexity, right? But wherever the data is stored, how are we protecting that? Whatever code that we're using, how are we protecting those libraries that we need? Do they have vulnerabilities? Or what's our bill of materials in terms of our software bill of
Yes.
materials that we're leveraging? In addition, now to bias and the security aspect of that. So it's more, and I'm looking into that in terms of like the research that I want to do. And then I guess the next question for you now is, when we talk about the explainability problem, what are some of the next steps that companies can start doing to further to avoid that explainability problem and subsequent issues that may happen?
Yeah, thanks. And I'm gonna get it on my own personal soapbox as a data product manager. It all starts, my opinion, with the data, right? Really spending a lot of time on governance, really understanding the type of data, teasing out some of the relationships with the data, right? There's some really easy mathematical, even with some of the software programs, if you're building, and not even an AI model, but just a model in general, just to really understand like what you're measuring. Do you have something else you're measuring that's similar to that? When you throw these type of things in AI models, you can only imagine like the typical boundaries that that our modeling has had prior to using these AI models kind of goes out the window. So I really think data governance, really understanding your data structures, the data, how it's being collected, your sources, because again, all those things, kind of when you kind of mix those in, can bring in that potential bias. But the more that you know, again, the explainability, the more that you know about your data can help you really document and understand, what it's like when when it first is raw or, prepared for, modeling, how, the state that it's in, the type, or, of the data. And then once you, put it and build it to, deploy an AI model, I think there's something to be said about, building it in parallel with a human in the loop, and just trying different aspects of modeling against the AI, fine tuning one little thing, and then you know from a human perspective doing that same thing and seeing the differences and comparing those things. And then again, that's where your risk tolerance comes in, when you see those differences between the in-house model that you built with the AI model, really understanding what your tolerance is for that and how much you want to lean on that, again, from the documentation perspective. And then the probably the next step would be for me is really thinking about somebody that would potentially interact with your AI model, that's engaging with your fintech to do some type of business. What kind of things, what kind of experiences will they have? Is that the kind of outcome that you want? Or do you want to build in some additional, um, you know, procedures or policies in some of the use cases, like, should there be like a secondary review before, it's related to back to the client, the member, the customer, that, for instance, that they're denied? Is there some type of safe boundary that you can build around the model that will still allow your business to run and flourish, but also be able to use the power of these sophisticated techniques?
Stand on that soapbox. I love it. Absolutely love
Thank
it.
you.
So the question I have for you, right? Because NIST 2.0 recently came out in February 26th. I dropped a video on it, just in more on the security side. And prior they had like 5 functions. Now they have a 6th function called the govern. So you mentioned earlier with governance, and for those who understand, can you just explain? You say data governance. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, I think it's the process for me and my agency, again, how we bring in data, the data owner, who is responsible if there are material changes to that data, who is responsible for making that call? When there's material changes, how are you going to measure it? How is it going to be input in the system? Really understanding for me, like how the data, how you either create the data or how it's brought into your organization, and all the policies, procedures, and bounding aspects when it comes to that.
Nice. No, thanks for that explanation. No, I love it. I love the different suggestions. Yeah, what I love most about it, how passionate you are about it. When you said, "Okay, I'm gonna go in my direction now." So no, that's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. It's like, yeah, the data owner, and very important. Yeah, no, that's all. These are all great points. Um, So, what I do for my guests is I give them the floor to talk about um, whatever they have going on, how people contact them, whether it's a business venture, studies, things that you want to basically shed light on and talk. And I give my guests that time. So, and I get off the stage and do it. So at this point of the show, I think we talked a lot about the explainability problem, different use cases. You gave some next steps, which absolutely loved. And I think this is a conclusion, but I want to give you that time to talk about things that you want to talk about. So I'm going to get off the stage and let you.
Thanks. Hey, everybody. Thanks again for tuning in, and Nandy for letting me to come back on the show. If anybody wants to get in touch with me, you please find me on LinkedIn. I am involved in a variety of different things. As Nandy mentioned, cyber and security. I'm very, very passionate about fraud and economics. I love a good research topic. Even better when it's based on a real life experience. I really love to bridge the uh, theoretical and then the applied spaces. So please get in touch with me on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect as well. I love, just engaging and meeting new, uh, friends and uh, folks who are interested in, again, tech behind fintech.
Thank you so much for all those who watched the show, comments, likes, and different things behind the scenes. Greatly appreciate all of you. To our guest, Medina, thank you very much for coming on board. And also, prior to your suggestion on this topic, the AI explainability, in preparing for this show, I was like, oh wow, I learned so much more about it. But it's not something that I was thinking about prior to this episode. So I really thank you for suggesting this topic. Like I always tell people, even though I do this, like this, been doing this podcast for a while, like on a weekly basis, it's really like kind of, I have my own selfish reasons. Like I get to talk to really smart people about topics that I might not know about, and I have to research. So, because sometimes if I'm at home on my own, I might binge on Netflix. So this gives me an excuse to do some real
We
work.
all binge on Netflix now. It's okay.
Yeah, yeah, you have to monitor it. But I know, like, let's say that if I didn't have this show on my Thursday night in terms of reading about the AI explainability problem, I'll be doing something else that is probably wouldn't be as productive. So I really thank you for because people might not know, like, with the show, sometimes we go back and forth, especially returning guests, what topic we want to discuss new. So I was going back and forth thinking about this. And then she mentioned this particular problem. I didn't even know what it was prior to. So now I know a lot more about it, and I did my research, and you enlightened me some more, and now other people know. So that's how we kind of spread the positive vibes and the knowledge. So I thank you for that. I look forward to you returning in the future when we talk about some other topic that we'll definitely find something cool to talk about. And for those who watch the show, thank you very much. Whether you're tuning in on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, or Instagram, whether you watched it today, tomorrow, or you're going to watch it next year, I thank you in advance. And have a great weekend. Once again, we are live every Friday at 12 p.m. EST. You can also find us on YouTube. Please subscribe. And we have recently been releasing a lot of YouTube shorts, so you should be seeing that on past episodes. So that concludes our show. And to all, once again, have a great week. And Medina, thanks again.
Thanks, everybody. Bye now.
Understanding the technology that powers the money is essential. Knowing the business drivers that inspire how the money is made is crucial. Bridging the gap between the mind of the technologist and the mind of the business is monumental. That is what TBF is all about. Let's start this never-ending conversation. It's time.